presence is an act of resistance. It's 2023. I probably shouldn't be here. Not in the sense that I shouldn't be standing on this stage doing this TED Talk, but more the sense that I, Kendy Alvarez, am the mayor of the Borough of Lewisburg. So much about our current political, social, and economic world right now doesn't necessarily make it seem like I should be the mayor of Lewisburg. It's somewhat refreshing and maybe surprising to some that I am here considering who I am. So who am I? I am an immigrant. I am a single woman in her 40s without a husband or children living in central Pennsylvania. I don't fit the mold. I intend to leave a lasting legacy in this place so much that my firsts become footnotes, and the focus is not the doors that I open, but the ones that I leave open behind me. My presence is an act of resistance. The question I'm always asked is, where are you from? Lewisburg, I reply. No, really, where are you from? It's as though I could not possibly be from this place because I can't trace 5 years of lineage to the Susquehanna River Valley. What's funny is that those who consider themselves from here have descendants who are like me, immigrants, who traveled from a far-off place and are like me, not really from here. But we can't have these critiques on their existence. And anyway, this isn't about them, it's about me. So where am I from? The easiest answer is that I'm from here. I grew up here, I went to school here, I have family ties here, I've got long-standing relationships here. I've been here longer than I haven't been here. The more complicated answer to that question is that I was born and spent the first 5 formative years of my life in a small village on the northern hills of Trinidad and Tobago. It's a place where I can trace my lineage back generations and say that we are really from there because my ancestors were descendants of the original inhabitants of the island. At the age of 5, I was plucked from my idyllic island existence and brought to a land where even familiar things seemed foreign. A mango was no longer something we plucked from the tree in the backyard, my brother climbing to death-defying heights to pass them down to my father, who would pass them to my mother, who would separate them between the sweet, ripe, and the green ones. I would sit at her feet, biting into each until I found the perfect tree-ripened mango. A mango, a life lesson, simultaneously a thing of hope and possibility, and the source of disappointment. In this new place, a mango was picked quite too early, bruised in transport, and lacking in every way. It would spoil the joy of biting into the bitter skin, to the sweet pulp. I hold on to the memory of sitting barefoot on the front step, sweet, sticky mango juice dripping down my arms as the sun dried it. I would attempt to consume every last bite. Since I relocated at the tender age of 5, everyone assumes I had less culture shock than my parents and siblings. It's as though I had not experienced quite enough in those first 5 years to really be significantly impacted by the change in climate and culture. I disagree. Those first foundational 5 years were spent in a place that reflected me, embraced me. It was a complex, comprehensive understanding of a collective history that told not only me, but everyone else there that we belonged. So much so that I think that it had a direct impact on my advancement at a very young age. I walked by 10 months. By the age of 2, I was reading and writing and doing basic math. At the age of 3, I recited the poem, The Snare, by James Stevens on national television. It was during the 12 and under talent competition, of which I could not participate because I was still too young. My exceptionality was something that immigrated with me and continued in spite of my environment. Upon relocating to Lewisburg, I was enrolled in elementary school, and based on my age, I attended kindergarten. That was the first lesson I learned about the devaluation of foreign until it becomes exotic. My parents had pushed for me to become tested based on my abilities and fought for me to be enrolled in first grade. My advanced performance meant that I could afford to skip part of my classes every day to slow down my speech and compensate for someone else's ability to listen more quickly. You see, I had speech therapy classes, which reinforced the need to assimilate. Although the focus was on my speaking patterns, cadence, and dictation, so that what you hear now has no remnants of my birth, identity, and culture, the whitewashing didn't stop there. My presence is an act of resistance. I want you to know it's not my fault. I did not set out to be a revolutionary. The universe decided this for me. It has decided that this is my journey. I tried to conform, to assimilate, to exist under the radar, to make everyone else feel more comfortable with my existence, to bide my time here. I was sure that I would just escape and never look back at central Pennsylvania. That obviously didn't work, because look at where I am. So I am here before you in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, on this TEDx stage, telling you about my origin story. I remember in the 7th grade, I was a skinny little thing, all arms and legs and hair, and when I talk about hair, I mean it stretched down to my middle of my back when it was curly, and it was down to my butt when it was straight, and it was rarely ever straight because nobody wanted to do that much labor. Central Pennsylvania is an interesting place for any hormonal middle schooler, but particularly for me. I was constantly fighting everyone about everything all at once. You see, middle school occurred during the Rodney King incident. The news played constantly, and there were opinions circling about and made me more militant than was good for anyone. I knew I had to choose my battles, and so since I couldn't have one about racism, I decided we'd take on the athletic department with sexism. Boys were allowed to play field hockey, a girls' sport, but girls were not allowed to play boys' sports. They didn't realize I knew about Title IX. And so that winter, all of me showed up for wrestling tryouts. I was in the best shape of my life, and I was getting my butt kicked every day. 3 weeks of practice where every day they asked me, "Are you ready to quit yet?" And finally, our first match. I sat silently on the bus, nervous about everything and nothing because I was used to losing. At barely 100 pounds, I was one of the first to compete, wearing my singlet, my sports bra, my t-shirt, because modesty. I was nervous but excited. This was my athletic debut. I killed it. Specifically, I pinned him. That's right, I won. Suffice to say, it was a moment that surprised everyone. I won. My father made me quit the next day because he's like, you proved your point. And so according to the 2020 census, 13 million people live in Pennsylvania. 3.4 million of them live in rural communities. From 1970 to present, the state of Pennsylvania has experienced an overall population increase of 10.2%. Rural areas have increased 3.4%. Here in the Susquehanna River Valley, an area that includes Union, Snyder, and Northumberland counties, the overall population has increased by 22% from 1970 to 2020. These results are a direct result of development in our area, agriculture, expansion in manufacturing and warehousing to logistics that included transportation, centralization of our healthcare catalyzed by a local hospital system, while recruiting additional service providers to our market, an energy industry that established a stronghold because of our proximity to the national grid, and the installation of state and federal penitentiaries as a new industry. Digging deeper into the 22% population increase for our region, the white population increased by 14%. The non-white population increased by 17%. For Union County in the 1990s, my immediate family was 6, and my extended family 15 of the total 187 people of color. We joked that everyone knew everyone. We didn't actually, but there were enough of us that you could figure out when somebody new came to town. My mother would not send my father to the grocery store by himself. A simple trip to pick up something that she needed to finish dinner would turn into a 45 minutes for a grocery store that was less than a mile down the street. Why? He talked to everybody. He was like a single-handed welcoming committee for people of color in the Susquehanna River Valley. It's like a radar went off and he knew that someone was passing through or had just looked at moving in. Over time, he became involved with an actual community development organization called CARE. It was comprised of community members who addressed issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they created programs for cultural competency, held lectures and roundtable discussions. They partnered with organizations to create safe spaces for dialogue about community and engagement. They created the path for me to follow. My presence is an act of resistance. I am the first woman of color to serve as mayor in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. I've been told I take up too much space. I am too loud. I am too proud. I am too visible. I am too vocal. I am too intense. I am too emotional. I'm too excitable. Knowing what it feels to be made to feel like I don't belong and choosing to be here is my act of resistance. I am determined to create opportunities for those who choose to be fully themselves in this space. I will leverage my social capital. I will open doors. I will stand in spaces that others do not yet have access to. I am not content on being the first if it means that I will be the only. My presence is an act of resistance. Thank you.